Hey there, it's Palm Mute Maniac, and today this is going to be the first video in my newbie series. I get a lot of people asking questions, especially in my alliance. Is this person good? Is this person good? What about my team comp? What should I do with this? What should I do with that? And I think a lot of what people have trouble with is understanding roles. And if you understand roles, you can build a pretty solid team comp, and of course, you can throw everything I'm about to say out the window. But what I'm going to do here is this is not a tier list. We might go a little who's best to worst based on what I hear from the community. But I'm going to go and talk about what each character's role is. So the roles that I have outlined here, you might disagree with them, but I feel like this is the best way for a new person to have an understanding of what that hero does. So when they're rolling and they're thinking about spending gems on a hero, they can think to themselves, do I need another mage? Do I need a support healer? Do I need a new carry? Right? And that's like, without going nuts and buying all the heroes, which we all will do eventually anyway, it kind of helps them understand what's going on. So we broke it up into carry, tank, mage dash DPS, which your carry should usually do more DPS than your mage, but that's the whole other thing. A warrior slash body on the field, which has its own needs and its own like request. It fills a certain role. They're not doing your warrior or body on the field isn't doing as much damage as your carry or your mage most of the time, though sometimes it happens. It's really just another body to put out there to take and deal damage and buy time or be affected by support heroes and other stuff. Then I'm grouping healer and support heroes. These are heroes that don't really do a lot of damage, but they help other heroes do more damage. Now, in some cases, support heroes can be broken, so we're going to play a little loose. Link heroes, of course, y'all know there's only 3 of them, so we're going to put them in their own special category. And I want to break out who the summoners are, because I think that having the new players know who the summoners are is really important. Now, our summoners are there's only a couple. There's Elizabeth. There's Ray, if I can find her, and there's Mara. Now, Elizabeth is a tank, Ray is a mage, and Mara is a warrior, right? Or it could be a carry if you're nuts. But these characters are summoners, and they proc meaning they trigger a very important relic, which is called Void. So I keep these guys separate in my mind. This is your tank summoner, this is your mage summoner, and this is your warrior summoner. And the Void Relic will increase damage for your entire group whenever an ally dies. And their summons are allies. They're treated like allies. So just knowing about these is really important for new players. I'm going to keep these summoners here. Saris makes illusions, but they're not treated as summons. If they die, it does not proc Void. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. So anyway, let's start working on carries. And what I'll try to do is I will put the carries that are closer to this column over here are the ones that I see are more popular than others. And it's don't take take everything with a grain of salt here, but you'll be able to see really a little glimpse as to who the strongest carries are and who the weakest carries are. So we'll start with Enrath. Now, Enrath for a little while was a carry, but he's kind of turned into a warrior slash body on the field. If you awaken him, he doesn't require any equipment. You put equipment on him, he's going to get worse. And some people still use him as his carry, but he really can't. He doesn't have survivability right now with the latest corruptions. So currently, I see him as a warrior. He's going to jump in the back line. He's going to disrupt. And he's going to be a body that your enemies are going to have to deal with. And I'm going to butcher some names, but, you know, American education system. So we have Anji. Anji is totally a support hero. She doesn't have as much HP as I would like her to have. She essentially puts a bubble around everybody, and she takes part of the damage. If you awaken her when she dies, she will heal everybody around her. So definitely a support role. She has 2 range, so you can put her behind a tank, and she'll do damage. So that's kind of cool. So that's like one way to get her to go on there. There is a bug where if you can trap Angie by a bunch of Sarises, or Seiyang, excuse me, even Saris will work. And it basically, you can essentially have an infinite absorb Angie. So that's pretty good. I don't know if they've patched that yet, but there's a strategy out there where you could put Angie in the very farthest center row, surround her by units that don't move, and she will endlessly absorb damage. And unless she's physically hit, she can't drop below 1 HP. So that's kind of cool. Obviously, we have our healer here. And my name escaped me for a second. It's Alberon. I don't really use him that often, so he heals in a circle. He offers protection. He has 2 awakenings. One that gives a little bit of extra physical damage based on the healing, and also salvation, which can target and do a healing radius around an enemy. Around a hero. So he's decent. He's a support healer. Most people have him like C tier. I will say that in Great Rift, he does put in a lot of work if you can get Alberon's attack speed to like nuclear levels, or put a Seiyang on him if you don't have anywhere else to put a Seiyang, or put him with a Bardry. Super good, but he is a healer. Do not try to make him a carry bad times. So then we have, my brain is also breaking, Armus. So Armus, some people put him as a carry, some people have him as a ranged. He is one of the first characters you get. He's not used often as carry. I think maybe a little bit in arena, but we're going to put him in the ranged DPS column just because of popularity. But, you know, like I said in the beginning of the video, almost anybody can be a carry if you're crazy enough, but not a lot of people are using him as a carry. A lot of it has to do with his attack speed, and there's an animation that happens when he uses his skill that slows him down a little bit. So no matter how much attack speed you put on him, there's an animation there that's kind of stops him from being as effective as he could be. There's a few characters that have that animation and make them not a carry. And so that's going to be why I put him here. We have, I always call her Mel because she reminds me of Mel from oh my god, what's that Overwatch, right? But she is Asak, and she's support. She is not a healer. She casts a chain which spreads damage from your carry to other places. Everybody in the support so far are backup heroes for Hero Lock, which I'm not even going to talk about Hero Lock in this video, but definitely look up Hero Lock if you're into that. And so all these supports are doing exactly what they should do. I mean, some people do build her on damage and give her lots of spell power, and she technically can get you through some things, but I'm comparing this based on powerful in strife and capable of being able to do phase 9 or higher in the current chapter 11, 12, and 13 corruption. And for that, she's going to be a support. And so that's pretty much what I have on her. Now, Baldir, this guy is a tank and a ranged DPS. From what I understand, I don't play him often. Most people who do their tier lists, they prefer to use him as a ranged DPS mage attack. He's a worse tank than he is ranged DPS. So for the sake of this list, I'm going to keep him in ranged DPS, but he can be a tank. What I think is good about this guy, especially if you're a new player, is that this game is all about RNG and rolling. And if you're playing a build that only has one tank, this guy, if you pull this guy, he can be a tank in a pinch, right? And so a lot of the game is a lot of your team compositions, if you're not playing like Hero Lock or you're not doing any exploit type of gameplay, is going to be about building around consistency. So consistency could be 2 tanks, 2 supports, and 2 mage ranged, right? That's a consistent build because you have a higher chance of getting a tank roll, a support roll, and a carry or ranged roll when in that first couple of waves to so that you have a shot at getting to the end. And so this guy kind of gives you, if he was let's say you had your carry, you had 2 tanks, and you had him ranged and maybe a support, this guy could float between an additional range and a tank and help you kind of bridge that gap. That's what he's meant for. Unfortunately, what matters a lot in this game is damage output. And unless you invest heavily into him, he just doesn't have the damage. And that's kind of why we're going to see that he's going to be like lower tier. Baudry, support class, hero lock character. He gives everybody MP. He is one of the 2 best mana batteries in the game. There's only 2 mana batteries. He's a mana battery in a group setting. You want to give him attack speed. You want to put wind accessories on him. The more he can spam his skill, the better. There are entire builds around Baudry, but if a Baudry dies and the build doesn't work, or if you have a build that's dependent on Baudry to come online and you don't roll Baudry, you're in a bad spot. Now, the good thing about Baudry is he's useful at tier 1 right away because he's giving MP right away. You don't need to rely on him being a level like with Belina. Belina is most useful at level like tier 3 or higher because there's a limit on how many eyes she can put out. Baudry is pretty much useful right away. So that's the one thing about him. Now, is he putting out damage? No. So that's okay. Then we have, oh my goodness, how do I even talk about the weirdness that Behemoth is? So there are people that play Behemoth carry, and they make lots of Behemoths. He jumps in the air, lands, and stuns and pushbacks. He has to attach, when he lands, he has to jump near another hero, friendly hero. So he can't really, if he's by himself, he's going to be jumping next to himself, like other characters that are him, right? So he has to have a buddy, and he does do some pushback. There are builds that are all about pushback. So they'll play Mace Relic, they'll play Spiked Log, they'll play Behemoths, and they'll control the board with pushback and stun while they have a carry do all of the work. He has a decent amount of HP, so that's kind of a big part of his build. He looks like a tank. He kind of plays like a tank. He sits on 1325 HP, but really, and this is, he's kind of a mix between a warrior because of his damage output and a support. Because he's supporting in that he's helping control the board, but he has more HP and he's doing damage and he's doing disruption. So like I should add like disruption. He's disrupting the warriors maybe I spelled disruption correctly. Oh, don't judge me, internet. We'll call it dist. That's how we do that. So he's disrupting the board in the same way that other warriors are disrupting the board. They're getting in the way of the carry and the support and the healers. So that's going to be where I put him, though. There are people that play him as carry, and there are people that play him as support. I'm going to intentionally not talk about Belina for a while, so I'm just going to sit there for a minute. All right, so Bommy is a ranged DPS that can be played as a carry. Bommy throws bombs, and the bombs are in a 3x3 pattern, so 9 blocks total. The problem with Bommy is that his damage is not high enough to be a carry. Bommy is great in Rift, Bami is a fantastic, easy to use, set and forget range DPS. You just throw him on the field, you give him swords and you give him bows, and he just consistently puts out lots and lots and lots of damage. If you have tanky, sustainy things, like Ophelias, or Dandelions, or anything that could really absorb and take the attention, lots of disruption, Bami excels. But Bami needs time to do damage. Because it's not lots of damage focused on one place, it's medium damage spread out. And so he's not that fast in terms of like taking things out. He's great in Rift. You do see him in Arena. You do see him in Strife. He's kind of like if you don't know who to put in for a ranged slot and you don't want to, let's say you have, you only get so many staffs, bows, and swords in any given round of 20, right? So if you don't have if you have a lot of magic users and you don't really have a place to put your swords that you're getting, Bami's a good spot for that. Put Bami in there. He's just a good all-around hero. So, Kayn. Kayn is a warrior. He's not going to do a lot of damage. He's kind of a crappy warrior, honestly. He does some, like his build. When you look at him, you go, oh, this guy, he's a Shadow faction. He's got these 2 swords. He looks like every most badass anime character you could possibly get, and he does very little damage. Like he's not. You can make anybody a carry, but he sucks. What he does do in meta, what people are using him for, is something called Extort. So upon defeating a target with his ability, he has a 50% chance of obtaining a tier 1 random equipment piece. That's what people are using him for. So basically, you need to roll him early. You need to tier him up early, and you need to invest in him early to maybe get a few pieces of additional equipment. Definitely a warrior, definitely disrupts, doesn't do a good job of absorbing. He starts out with 846 health, so he has half the health of Behemoth, whatever. So it's just one of those things where he is super squishy. You can maybe play him with like Hat Relic, give him some evasion. You could pair him with Garam and use Garam's share evasion relic with him, and they could be like a good little pair. Of course, you could have some supporting healers, but it doesn't really work. When his Circus of Death does damage in like a radius, but it just takes too long. He does have some sustain because he's jumping all over the board. But Anrath has the same kind of sustain. So I put him in warrior, and I don't think of him as a carry personally. Don't flame me. Be nice. Okay, so then we're going to go with, I think it's Kathy, if I'm not mistaken. Again, the people I don't play much, I don't think about much. So Kathy's kind of like a bland B-tier range DPS. early games, you can play her as a carry. There's an argument to be made that if she's a carry, she's probably a low-tier carry. And I'll put her up there for that reason. If you put like sharpness kit on her and attack speed, my issue with her specifically is her skill animation slows her DPS down. Yeah, technically, like her awakening finale, her strafe does a bunch of extra damage, but I almost kind of feel like she needs to just keep shooting, and I would have more consistency with her. So basically, let's say you put 3 tier, mythic tier bows on her. She's gonna fire really fast, but then that spell animation's always gonna be slow. It's gonna go and then stop. And then the skill, her spell damage, well, she doesn't have spell damage, but her skill damage will happen. Then, and then it stops. So, if you compare her to Hanzi just keeps laying down the damage consistently. And there's nothing, the skill doesn't stop. Hanzi actually stacks damage, right? So the longer in the game you are, Hanzi gets better and better and better. She has more consistent damage for a carry, but the spell animation kind of stops. So I'll leave her in carry, but I'm going to put her at the end of the list. And you technically can carry with her, but you have to really get her up there. Obviously, with Linkero, she can be better, especially mono. You can raise her attack. She just, in my experience, she doesn't attack fast enough, even with maxed out attack speed, to be there. So we're going to go to the next hero, Chang'e. Chang'e can carry. Chang'e has this combination of really fast attack speed and really, and she uses her spell damage really, really quickly. So like loading her up with attack speed and then doing like Relentless Slash is pretty good. Her problem with her is her spell damage starts out at 75. So, and her attack is like 71. If you max her out, it's like 90 and 95. And so she's just not strong enough to be a great carry compared to the S tier people. That's the problem with her. If she's disrupted, she can't dodge like Garam, right? So her sustain is lower than it needs to be a proper carry. If she had much higher sustain, let's say she had a 2000 HP tier 1, she would have higher sustain, she would live longer, and she'd be able to get her damage out more. But in my opinion, she's a warrior, and she's a higher tier warrior. So I'll probably put her right below Anrath, and that's kind of where I would put her. And other people might disagree. I should start sorting these now a little bit. Marjorie for sure. And here we go. Okay, cool. So we're getting adjustments here. Dandelion, best tank in the game. She heals herself. She applies an AoE of Weaken, which reduces defense of everyone around her. She can stun. Dude, just absolutely the best tank in the game. Super, super strong, man. Like, what's kind of funny about Dandelion's kit is Dandelion is doing what Ophelia does, but without the legacies. So the Ophelia legacy does some debuffing, but Dandelion does debuff built into her kit. So like, if you had a choice between vanilla Dandelion no legacy and vanilla Ophelia no legacy, like Dandelion's the better choice. However, right now, because of the Ophelia legacy, Ophelia becomes a little bit of a better debuffer than Dandelion does, but Dandelion is she's healing herself whether or not she does damage to other people. You could put a Seiyang on her because she has 60 MP. And she can start healing herself immediately. So super strong, definitely good. Daniel is the worst tank in the game. He's an intro tank. He needs to get rebuilt. He's a tank. He doesn't do anything else. Draco is just a mage DPS, does wide damage. Doesn't really see too much play in terms of competitive. If you're rolling him and you get him, great. Have fun with him. Play some like mid-tier games. Not a lot of people are using him. He's low in arena. Now the thing is, with all these legacies and accessories that are coming out, you could potentially make him good. The issue with this character in particular is that he has very low HP, like extremely low HP. And he doesn't do a lot of damage. He's like mid-level damage, like C-tier damage. So perhaps if you load him up and max out his accessories and give him like magic armor legacy, you can make him a B-tier. You maybe throw a Seiyang on him and make him do flamethrower every couple seconds. The flamethrower animation is slow also, so you can't speed it up. So he'll keep casting it, but then the ticks of damage are based on the animation, not the attack speed. And that's a problem for him. So, of course, I'm I'm a big fan of this next character, but I'm going to butcher the name, so we're going to find her first in my other screen here. Oh my god, there we go. Estia, okay? She is a healer. She's a fantastic support. And the only reason why I think maybe Angie's higher than her is because Angie's a backup hero for Hero Lock. She heals. She adds protection, which procs Magic Armor Legacy right now. She helps with knockback. So she also, the more pieces of equipment you put on her, the faster her attack speed is. She's like everything about the foundation of her is good. The only problem with her is that she doesn't use magic attack. She only uses attack. So all her stats are rolled on attack. And so if you have to put swords on something, if you're like an all magic build and you have no place to put swords, you can put swords on her and help her attack out. But it's like she doesn't really put out enough damage to make her a carry. I've tried extensively to make her a carry. Dude, you can't make her a carry. But you could put a bunch of her out there and she could add knockbacks to other heroes. So that's super cool. Great with swords. But she's good. I mean, she's good if you don't have a healer. She's definitely a better healer than our starter hero is. And play with her, have fun with her, try to see if she works. She's interesting enough to be good in some team comps, so she would be like higher in this list. You know what? I'm not going to consider hero. If I don't consider Hero Lock, then she's here. I'm not going to consider Hero Lock. We're just going to talk about roles, traditional, non-exploitive stuff. So the next one is Evan. Evan is your starting carry. Now, I'm putting Evan higher than Hanzi, not because Evan's a better carry, but everyone starts with Evan. So Evan, if done correctly, you're a new player, Evan can get you through the first 10 chapters pretty consistently, and maybe probably through most of the 10 chapters of Corruption. Evan can get your Dominion built all the way. If you're lucky enough to roll a Baudry, you put Baudry behind Evan, or if you're lucky enough to roll a Seiyang, you put a Seiyang on Evan. And Evan will just continuously throw giant blades of damage through enemies. Evan has a decent spell damage. So, Evan's a carry, 100%. If you're not using Evan as a carry, you're using him as a warrior. But as a warrior, without link heroes and things supporting him, he's actually a crappy warrior. But as a carry, and you're building around him as a carry, and you're giving him a link hero, and you're giving him the best possible support system, then he's a decent carry. So Hanzi, more damage than Evan. Evan, more important than Hanzi because he is your first starting hero. So that's why I'm putting him there. And so we have Feral, which I always call Falafel. He was a top tier carry for a while. They nerfed him. He's kind of been relegated back down to like mage range DPS. He has a lot of MP, so he's built to be a carry because he needs to have a mana battery put on him to be his absolute best. But unfortunately, he's not doing like sheer amount of damage that he needs to. He can get you through the first 10, if you focus carry on him. His abilities do lines of damage. He's decent in Rift, but for me, I put him either above or below Bomby, depending on what you need as my additional range. I'm not putting him in carry. Other people might put him in carry. Garam is a carry. I will fight you. I will fight you to the ends of the earth. She is supposed to be a tank, but she's a carry because she's so good. You put sharpness accessories on her, you give her hat, and you just let her rip. She is like I said, she was built to be a really interesting dodge tank, but she is so strong that she can... Garam in a mono can beat Corrupt 11 and 12 right now. If you build her crit style, I actually have another video about that. So Garam is a carry, and I would say bloop right up there. So fantastic carry. Definitely awesome. If you don't want to play her as a carry, you can play her as a tank. So the problem with her as a tank is that her evade scales. So, like, if I have Dandelion tank and she's only a 3 to 3rd tier tank, she'll be pretty good. She'll take some damage. She'll heal herself. She's really good. But 3rd tier Garam is kind of squishy because she doesn't have enough evasion to be... She'll do okay. But if there's a lot of ranged units, like in Chapter 11, there's all those throwers, she kind of dies pretty quick. And you are RNGing. She really needs to be a carry. She needs to be the focus of your books. She needs to have a link hero. She needs to be everything needs to be built around her because you need to get her tiered up as fast as possible to be useful. And that's what, like, in my mind, sets apart a carry from a base consistent character, right? So you have Gidnil. He's a support person. Okay, so he sucks, except his awakening is okay. He punches really slow. And eventually he does these things called spell blocks. And a spell block negates spell damage one time. We have Mighty Blocks, and I think he was built before Mighty Blocks. I have seen some crazy-ass people build, like, 10 or 15 third-tier Gidnils in Strife. And essentially, all they're doing is adding spell blocks to each other. And it's like this impenetrable wall. And behind them, they have, like, a carry, like a Saras or Hanzi or somebody. So... that does exist. He's not used other than that I've seen. So, you know, it's like in order for him to be good, you have to invest a lot of gold and gems into him. You have to get him awakened. And then even then, he's really not that good. He has some HP. He's not a tank on his own. You know, it's almost like he's definitely a support character. And that's kind of where I go from there. And... so Harang, also kind of a support character. I would say he looks like he has this sword, right? You want him to at least be a warrior or ranged DPS. But what he's doing is stunning. He's mostly stunning. So his role is to support the carry and help with sustain. So in my opinion, please, you can feel free to assassinate me. I put Harang in support role for sure. Hela is a mage. Hela is she doesn't have attack speed in a traditional sense. She has a little timer. Her damage isn't as high as it needs to be. They keep giving her more and more damage. You can dump a ton of bows on her to make her attack speed faster. She needs like 2x damage, basically. She's not scary. It's just, she's too slow. There's so many things in this game where you could use to exploit attack speed. And so, like, Hanzi or Garam, you throw bows on them and it feels really good and the DPS really increases. I could put 700% attack speed on her and she still just isn't putting out a lot of damage. However, you're new in the game, you roll a Hela, and you need a widespread damage, kind of like a Balmy. She's good. Throw some staffs on her. She'll do good. She's a CB. She'll get you through the first 10 chapters. She might even, you know, they're always, I think that one Awesome Piece really likes her, and they're going to make her better, just like they made Affiliate better. They're going to make her work. They like her concept. So hang on to her, but this is kind of where I place her a little above Draco. That's pretty much it. Ian is a carry, for sure. What makes Ian a carry is he does an increase. His attack is percentage based, so you can essentially scale his attack to insane proportions. He's built a lot like Hela is with a timer, but what makes him good is that he deals damage equal to his attack, which would be like 100, and that scales up, plus a percentage of his attack based on spell power, right? So you can really make him broken. He's really good in raid. I'm not sure if people are still using him because Saras is so broken, but he was a staple in raid for a very long time. He has an awakening ability called Fatal Blow, which does his damage in a 5x5. So you can do all kinds of support shenanigans and Link Hero shenanigans and Relic shenanigans to multiply his spell damage all the way up, and then stack his attack and increase his damage output. And he could wipe the fucking battlefield. He is extremely good. I would say above Evan for sure. He's up there. He's a staple, and he has his purpose. He has his purpose. He's good for raid. I've seen him used in Strife. I've seen people put like 40 or 50 Lunaires on him. I would say 40, 50. Like 15 Lunaires. They'll just, because Lunaire stacks infinitely with diminishing return, they'll put a bunch of Lunaires on him and just continue to stack his attack percentage boost by an insane level, and then have him just wipe the field. The only problem I have with him is I wish his HP was a little higher. He does, so a lot of this game depends on doing attack and leeching life. And with Ian, because his attacks take longer, he'll lose like 40-50% of his HP. Then he'll do his attack and fill himself back up, right? If your enemy is able to kill him faster than he can generate his attack swing, and it's based on a timer, or he gets stunned, he dies. So, there's an argument to be made to give him like Steel Set, but then you're not boosting his damage, and he's supposed to be a carry. So healers for sure. Jinju is a warrior body. I would say probably a better version of Chang'e. They are almost equal. They could replace each other. So Chang'e does a bit more damage, shorter range. Jinju does a little bit less damage, long range. You can put her. She's fun in Great Rift. You could give her attack speed and everything else. But she's not a carry. She's a warrior. She's a warrior body on the field. She does some disruption. The fact that her damage goes far through enemies can be really strong. She's penetrating the front line and doing damage to the back line. So she will protect your squishies, and she's also contributing to damage behind into the back line. So definitely a good choice for a warrior. But there's a lot of good choices for a warrior. So it's one of those. Joel is a tank. He's a tank, and so what makes Joel decent is that he's a tank with built-in anti-CC, control. He can't be charmed, he can't be stunned. That's if his skill is going. His attack speed is really important for him because he does this AoE attack over and over and over, very similar to Enrath. But he absorbs life with each one. What happens, though, is that he's easily overwhelmed. So he needs a lot of defense additions. So Steel Set, for sure. You want his attack speed up, for sure. He's not necessarily a high-tier tank. He's not you can make him a carry, but you're not going to get very far. And I think that there are a lot of warriors that do more damage than he does. In certain situations, he's decent as a warrior. He has to be fully surrounded. But that doesn't always happen. It's chaos out there. So I'm going to put him as a lower tier tank, and we'll keep rolling through. Kanak is a carry. Ooh, where are we going? I think maybe... Yeah, probably here. Kanak is a carry. He's super good. He basically diseases the enemy, and when that enemy dies, the disease spreads to other enemies. He's broken. You stack tons of attack speed on him, and everyone's getting diseased. Anybody who is afflicted by his skill does less damage to him. So you put a row of connects out there, you're now reducing damage dealt to him, which is really strong. His damage ticks also, so it goes damage over time, and it stacks. So you make him really, really strong. His damage gets around things like reflect, and you're able to keep him away from melee range of enemies, because he does have a decent range. And people are right now clearing everything with him. I believe he is who's primarily used in clearing Chapter 13 corruption with some Seongs. He's just really, really good. You have to know how to use him, and it's a game of skill with Kanak. It's not like Garam where you can hero lock her and set it and forget. You kind of have to be really good with hero positioning and knowing how to use link heroes to body block your Kanak to keep your Kanak alive. He doesn't necessarily have a lot of HP, though it's kind of in the mid-range. But yeah, he's a carry for sure. Kurdan is probably a lower tier carry. Great with teleport relic. You teleport Kurdan to the back line. His attack speed matters. He's basically a blender. He turns on a blender. When his blender is going, he takes less damage under a certain health. You want to stack him with a Lunaire to boost his attack. His attack is all based on spell damage, not sword. You don't put sword on this guy. You put staffs on this guy. He was really good in chapters 1 through 10. He was really good in Arena, so people still use him. They just keep making really better people, and so he's like a low tier carry. He's not a good warrior. If you're not focusing on him and tearing him up, he's a shit warrior. He doesn't really have enough health to be a decent warrior. And so it's like he's either a carry or you don't use him. That's my opinion. Then you have Reinhard, who is your better than Daniel, worse than everybody else tank. Though there are people right now who are using him, he does have built-in reflect. So if you're able to get his HP really, really, really high, he does reflect, which is okay. But he doesn't do anything else other than be a meat shield. And if you're going to have a meat shield, what about a meat shield that debuffs and heals itself, right? Just saying. Definitely, I would say, in my opinion, third best tank in the game. I forget the character's name. I think it's Lily. My brain's not working here. I'm actually pulling up her list on my other screen here. Why can't I find her? Oh, I have a special skipper. That's why I can't find her. Where are you? You're hiding. I can't find her because she doesn't look like this. She looks like a little tiny fox person. Okay, so this is Lily. Lily is a backup hero, which is amazing. And so she's a tank for hero lock, essentially. She has high HP. She heals herself. Not as good as Dandelion, but she heals herself. And if she dies, the little fox does a backflip off of the damn golem. And within a couple seconds, there's a brand new golem at full HP. So your sustain, if you are using her as tank midfield and you have some warrior, some bodies, she dies. Your Jindru or any of your other meat beef cakes that are out there, or your Dandelion, hopefully, who's out there with her as your second tank, she will do a backflip. That tank will take on the rest of the damage, and within about 2 or 3 seconds, she's back out in the front line. She's not doing a lot of damage. She is there to absorb damage. That's her role. She does, in her awakening, she does do an initial stun. She jetpacks into the enemy and will do a mass stun. That's decent. It's helpful. It does help lower that initial DPS. It puts there's a lot of positioning that really matters where you have to move your heroes. You could hard target some frontliners that you want stunned initially. So She's good for that reason. Lunaire is a Link hero. She buffs attack and spell damage, and you can stack as many Lunaires on a single carry as you want. She does give a little bit of protection on the initial cast. So if you put her on Garam, for example, when they initially link, she'll give Garam a little bit of protection, maybe a couple hundred points of protection, and then from there on out, she's just buffing attack and spell damage. There is a diminishing return with Lunaire. I believe it's like 25% for every additional. 50% when applied to the same hero. So yeah, so 50%, and you can stack a ton of them on your carry. That's what makes Lunaire good in that particular case. But listen, these Link heroes all have a purpose. They all have a purpose. And we're going to skip to the next Link hero, which is going to be Mono. Mono heals. Heals and buffs attack. Mono, on Mono's Awakening, as long as Mono is a lower tier than who he's linked to, he will fire his thing right away. Mono also has a single time anti-CC. So if he's linked to somebody who's stunned and he turns his link on after they're stunned, it'll clear crowd control. So Mono is fantastic for Ian, for Garam, for some range carries. And Mono scales, so also with these Link heroes, they scale based on their own stats. So if you're using like Void Relic or Fear Devour or any of these relics that increase damage over time or increase stats over time, it does affect their output as well. So depending on the type of output. Then you have Seiyang. So Seiyang does attack speed or does mana battery stuff. So if you want to so she has two different awakenings. One is to increase attack speed and spell and attack damage, and which is great for Kanak. And she's also a mana battery. You can attach her to somebody as long as they have 60 MP or higher. They will start casting their spell. She will refill their mana consistently. And if they don't have 60 or higher, she will eventually, when she gets her skill up herself, she won't just automatically start of the fight. She'll have to hit some things. Then she'll start being a mana battery. So mana battery is great for Mel. Mana battery is great for a lot of this ranged stuff. Great for Elizabeth to start making her little troops super fast. Great for Dandelion, even as a tank, because Dandelion has a heal ability. So you could put a Seiyang on Dandelion, and Dandelion's healing immediately and consistently through the entire link. So definitely a little mana battery. So between her and Bardry, they're both the main supports for that. So all these Link heroes, there is no best. There's only what you need for your build. Then we have, what is his name? I barely use this guy. Leica, support. He wants to be a warrior. He's a really terrible ranged attacker who will transform into a really terrible backline warrior. The only saving grace for this guy is that he's a backup hero, which means he works in hero lock. Sometimes your hero lock needs a little extra damage, though if you're doing that, that means your carry is probably a low tier carry. He is one of these. You have him so that you could sell him in hero lock characters, unfortunately. He's important for hero lock. That's pretty much it. He needs to be rebuilt. He's interesting. I think his concept is good, but that's pretty much where it is. Mel is going to be a high tier carry, probably at the same level as Ian, which it's not letting me drag anymore. No, Ian, you're up here, buddy. We'll do this. Mel is a percent-based damager. She's spell-based and percent-based, so the more spell damage you can get on her, the better. You want to basically surround her with all of the best stuff. You want to give her as much damage as humanly possible, and she does a very wide area damage. Great with teleport. Put her in the back line, have her decimate the back line. And she's my favorite carry personally. Has been the staple in the game forever. Great in Rift, great in Raid. Probably one of the best Raid characters. Just all around great. Now, when you get Mel, if you try to use Mel as a warrior or a body, she's god awful. She'll die all the time. She needs to be, so carries are supported and focused on. That's I want to keep repeating myself on that. If you're not focusing on these characters, they're not that great. But if you play them and you focus on them, and you give them all the books and you give them all the MP, they're gonna be fantastic. So Mel's definitely a high tier carry. This character I use a lot, but I can't pronounce her name half the time. So that's going to be Mercel. Mercel. Support hero. She's up there. If we don't consider hero lock, I'd probably put her like around Heron. So she has an anti-CC AoE, which is fantastic. It'll block Charm, great in Strife. You can give her attack speed. You can give her a Seiyang, and she's just doing anti-CC healing and damage everywhere. She doesn't do a lot of damage. She doesn't do a lot of healing. So it's like this really weird spot. It's like she kind of reminds me a little bit of Bulger or Boldir or whatever how you say his name. It's like they're great sixth hero. So you have your kit. You know who you want. You know what you want to do. But you really don't know. You want some consistency. They both kind of fall in line as they're not like great on their own, but they are great supporting other characters. This will keep your front line from being stunned. It'll keep your front line from being charmed. It will give them heals, and it'll also hurt any other character that's doing damage. So definitely super strong in that capacity. More useful than a lot of the other support heroes out there. Doesn't have knockback, doesn't increase, maybe, honestly, I'd probably put her higher than stun because she's a better support than that. So, all right, guys, this is part 1. It's an hour long. I'll do part 2 after.